Shri Hare Namaha. We shall begin today's session now. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha, Shri Paramagurubhyo Namaha, Shri Adi Gurubhyo Namaha, Shri Mula Gurubhyo Namaha, Shrimad Ananda Tirtha Bhagavad Padacharya Namaha, Shri Vedavyasaya Namaha, Shri Bharati Namaha, Shri Saraswati Namaha, Shri Vayve Namaha, Shri Brahmane Namaha, Shri Mahalakshmi Namaha, Shri Narayanaya Namaha, Shri Hare Namaha, Moksha Prada Shri Vasudevaya Namaha, Krishnaya Vasudevaya Hare Paramatmane Pranatakleshanashaya Govindaya Namo Namaha. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो ग्रन्थमुदीरयेत् नारायणं सुरगुरुं जगदेकनाथं भक्तप्रियं सकललोकनमस्कृतं च त्रैगुण्यवर्जितम् अजं विभुमाद्यमीशं वन्दे भवग्नममरासुरसिद्धवन्द्यम् अविकाराय शुद्धाय नित्याय परमात्मने सदैकरूपरूपाय विष्णवे सर्वजिष्णवे नमो हिरण्यगर्भाय हरये शंकराय च वासुदेवाय ताराय सर्गस्थित्यन्तकारिणे एकानेकस्वरूपाय स्थूलसूक्ष्मात्मने नमः व्यक्तव्यक्तरूपाय विष्णवे मुक्तिहेतवे सर्गस्थितिविनाशानां जगतोऽसि जगन्मयः मूलभूतो नमस्तस्मै विष्णवे परमात्मने. So in yesterday's session, we discussed about the Shastras and the ways to obtain true knowledge or the proper aparoksha jnana, which is required for one to progress spiritually and practice bhakti. So in today's session, we shall continue discussing more of the same thing. So before proceeding, does anyone have any queries or any doubts from yesterday's session or any of the topics which we have covered so far? So if there are no queries as such, we shall proceed. So one question to everyone present here: what do you consider to be the highest purpose, or what should be one's highest purpose in life?
To realize Vishnu Sri Hari.
Could you elaborate what exactly you mean by that?
Means attaining Aproksha Gyan.
Yes, but what is the use of that jnana?
We will realize the true self of ours. We will realize Sri Hari.
Yes, so as said by another person has also mentioned here, more than serving people, that comes as a byproduct actually if we have aparoksha jnana. So we have the highest goal as bhakti. That is what we should have as our highest goal. So this is the final tatparya of all the shastras and what Sri Madhvacharya and Sri Jayatirtharu have also mentioned in their works. One's highest purpose has to be bhakti. So what is the definition of bhakti? Bhakti is defined in the Narada Pancharatra as Mahatmya Jnana Purvastu Sudridaha Sneho Sarvatodhikaha Bhaktir iti Prokta Taya Muktir Nacha Anyata. So what this means is that the firm love for God which comes from the proper knowledge of his greatness, that is bhakti. So this is actually inclusive of everything else, including knowledge of who Bhagwan is, who Parabrahman is, and how we can approach him, why we should serve him, and all that. So there is one statement of Sri Jayatirtha which says, Bhaktya jnanam tato bhaktis tato drishtis tatascha sa tato muktis tato bhakti saiva syat sukha rupini, which means that from bhakti one obtains jnana, and from that one obtains the next stage of bhakti again. And this bhakti leads to mukti, where there is proper bhakti which manifests. So there are actually three stages of bhakti. First is just the simple bhakti, which we do not, which we have without high knowledge of the shastras or anything to do with spirituality, which comes through simple sadhana and upasana of the devatas and Bhagwan. The next stage of bhakti is Pakwa Bhakti, which means which is that bhakti which is obtained and enhanced through Paroksha Jnana. Paroksha Jnana or hidden knowledge is the Agamotta Jnana without Vivekotta Jnana. As we discussed yesterday, there are two types of jnana, and that is there Agamotta and Vivekotta. So just the knowledge of the shastras with basic knowledge and a basic understanding of them without deep knowledge and application of that knowledge in real life is Paroksha Jnana. So at that time, we will be in a stage called Pakwa Bhakti. Paripakwa Bhakti is the final stage, which comes after obtaining Aparoksha Jnana and becoming an Aparoksha Jnani with the proper realization of Paramatma. This is very a firm bhakti and is perfect in its knowledge. And such people will always be performing sadhana in every breath as they're living. So through all actions which they perform, they will be performing some sort of sadhana and they'll be able to see Bhagwan in every action which they do and they can connect with him. This is the state which is known as Dharana in the Vishnu Purana 6th Amsha. So once a person reaches this stage, moksha is usually guaranteed because that comes naturally as a byproduct. But our highest goal is not moksha or anything. Our highest goal is to practice bhakti. And bhakti is inclusive of jnana yoga and karma yoga. So this is once again stated in the Vishnu Purana 6th Amshas, 6th and 7th Adhyayas. Any questions till now?
Brother, I wanted to ask whether bhakti and moksha are they the same thing or are they different?
What do you understand by bhakti and moksha? Define the words.
Moksha is becoming free from all sufferings of this world, and bhakti is, as you said, having the knowledge of the Bhagwan and serving him.
Yes, attachment to Bhagwan or a love for Bhagwan through knowledge of his greatness is bhakti. So obviously both are not one and the same thing at all.
Okay, so when we do bhakti, the moksha also comes as a byproduct. Is it?
Yes, once a person attends aparoksha jnana, the moksha is pretty much guaranteed as a byproduct.
Understood, brother. Thank you.
Through bhakti,
Brother,
one
Prokshagyan
actually.
is a by.
Yes, what is it?
I was asking that Prokshagyan is a byproduct of moksha, no?
No, it's the reverse. Without aparoksha jnana,
Okay,
one won't achieve moksha at all.
okay.
Aparoksha jnana is that stage where one has the perfect knowledge of Bhagwan and has become spiritually realized by seeing Bhagwan in all of their actions and every time, every moment when they are alive. So that comes through bhakti, and through aparoksha jnana, one reaches that highest stage of bhakti where there is constant practice of proper bhakti in its perfect sense, as per that person's capacity and position in the Taratamya. So that will subsequently lead to moksha because that person has fully become detached from the world and all the material things and is only has fixed his or her mind on Bhagwan only. That's why.
I guess you're on mute.
I wasn't speaking anything now.
Okay, brother.
Does anyone have any more queries now? So if there are no more questions, we can proceed further. So as we mentioned, there are three stages of bhakti. So the first is the initial stage of bhakti, where one doesn't have much knowledge of Bhagwan, but still worships him and performs some upasana and has some slight form of bhakti. The next stage is Pakwa Bhakti. Then after that comes Paripakwa Bhakti, which means that bhakti which is obtained after Aparuksha Jnana. So those who are in the state of Paripakwa Bhakti are those who have fully destroyed their prarabdha karmas or are in the process of destroying it, and they would have completely become detached from performing any karmas. So while obviously one will be performing karmas all the time, as in one will always be doing some sort of action, but those are not those actions which will lead to the generation of karma palas. So such kind of karmas will stop them from continuously being in the cycle of samsara and continuously having karmas and the karma palas. So one can find similar information on this and more details in the Bhagavad Gita. So the highest goal which one needs to have is bhakti. So this bhakti is not something which will lead us to something else. Bhakti itself is the end goal. So this is so our highest goal is not moksha or simply achieving Bhagwan. Our highest goal should be Bhagavad Prapti by practice of bhakti. So as we discussed previously, for achieving yoga or union with Bhagwan, there are actually two methods. Now one should know that bhakti is the only method, because it is said in the Narada Pancharatra while defining bhakti, taya muktir nacha anyata, which means there is mukti only through that and not through anything else. Now in the Vishnu Purana, one can notice that there is a mention of how one can achieve the state of yoga or union with Paramatma. Now union here is uniting the mind, the buddhi and the soul with Paramatma. That is achieving the state of dharana or practicing bhakti. Now this is inclusive of jnana and karma. Jnana is knowledge, and knowledge is again of two types. That is agamotta and vivekotta. Agamotta is the jnana which we obtain from the Shastras here. So the Vedas, the Puranas, Mahabharata, Mula Ramayana, and the Pancharatra and all the Shastras in accordance with them will provide us the Agamotta jnana, or the knowledge which we get from the Agamas, that is the Shastras. But the jnana which causes the realization of Paramatma and gives us Aparoksha jnana is Vivekotta jnana. So this Vivekotta jnana is that which is achieved through proper contemplation of Paramatma using the Agamotta jnana and with wisdom. That is why it is called Vivekotta jnana, that which manifests from wisdom. So for the sake of Agamotta jnana, that is the very initial point where one starts achieving jnana. So for this, it is necessary for everyone to learn the Shastras and perform their adhyayana under a guru. Without jnana, it is impossible to achieve moksha. And yesterday there was a query about Moha Shastras which we were explaining. So the one more thing is the Padma Puranas Uttarakanda also mentions the same thing about the Moha Shastras, where Shiva himself recalls Vishnu's words and explains them to Parvati Devi, where he talks about how Vishnu himself had instructed him to create the Moha Shastras and delude people. Now here this can be found in the Padma Purana Uttarakanda's 71st Adhyaya, and this was quoted by Sri Madhvacharya in the second Adhyaya of the Mahabharata Tatparya Nirnaya. And this was also mentioned by Sri Bananjay Govindacharya in his discourse on the classification of the Puranas, which one can find on our YouTube channel as well. So in the Padma Purana, Shiva himself explains how he created those Moha Shastras, and he also mentions that the Tatparya of all the Shastras is Vishnu's supremacy only. That is Vishnu Paratva. Knowing that Sri Vishnu is the supreme being and one should practice bhakti to achieve him and to serve him is the highest goal, and that alone can lead to mukti. And also he mentions that achieving moksha without jnana is also stated to delude people. That is also one way of deluding people. If at all one finds statements in the Shastras suggesting that, or even even they are told by someone that moksha does not require jnana, it is something delusive and it is false knowledge. Such knowledge will obviously lead to downfall and will not elevate one in their spiritual well-being. So for this we have so many Shastras, and again the Vedas are primarily restricted to the Dvijas. So the direct knowledge which one gets from the Vedas is obtainable only by the Dvijas, because that has its own protocols and requires lots of procedures and rules and regulations which must be followed. But all the other Shastras, for this reason, themselves are Upabrahmanas of the Vedas. Upabrahmanas means those which are like addendums to the original Shastras and which explain them. So the other Shastras, such as the Itihasas, Puranas, Dharma Shastras, are intending to explain the Vedas elaborately. So because they complete the Vedas, they are called the Upabrahmanas of the Vedas. So because they are said to be the Upabrahmanas, they were authored by the Devatas and the Rishis for the very purpose of granting the same Aparoksha Jnana to everyone else who are not Dvijas or who cannot directly achieve the same knowledge from the Vedas. So similarly, we had the case of Shandilya Rishi, who mentions that he was unable to attain absolute Aparoksha Jnana even by knowing the Vedas. So he resorts to worshipping Bhagwan through the protocols of the Pancharatra Shastra, and because of that he actually achieves Aparoksha Jnana and he is able to achieve the highest state which he had to. Now this does not mean that the Vedas were defective as such, but it was his inability to use them properly because of their vastness. So does anyone have any questions so far? So if there are no questions, we shall proceed now. So the stage of dharana has to be attained through continuous practice of all the rules and regulations which are mentioned in the Shastras, and by applying the spiritual knowledge which we get from the Shastras mainly, and through that we will perform sadhana continuously and obtain the proper Aparoksha Jnana. So those who are in the stage of Aparoksha Jnana usually won't commit any of the Papa Karmas, or even if they apparently commit the Papa Karmas, they will be free from all the sinful effects of them, and they will do it only as a way of sadhana to please Bhagwan. Now even the Devatas, for that matter, have committed certain Papa Karmas in certain instances. Even the Devatas, as said in the Vishnu Purana, Ashuddhahate Devaha Karma Yonayaha. So this is said in the 7th Adhyaya of the 6th Amsha of the Vishnu Purana. So probably, if I'm not wrong, the 76th shloka. This was quoted by Sri Parashara Bhattar to explain that the Devatas are also not pure beings, because they are also in samsara, and they also, despite being much elevated than the human beings, are still prone to committing papa karmas or having certain defects. So these devatas too, being aparoksha jnanis, have had certain defects at certain times. Now this doesn't mean that it's their downfall as such, because they are usually aparoksha jnanis only. I mean, the devatas who attain those positions are aparoksha jnanis who have completed their sadhana. So because of that, it is actually a way of service to Bhagwan. Even the devatas like Brahmadeva, Pranadeva have exhibited certain defects at certain times. They have actually pretended to exhibit those defects because, unlike the other devatas, they are not overcome by them. So in the Bhagavata Tatparya Nirnaya also, Sri Madhvacharya mentions that Brahma has exhibited sorrow, ignorance, and other qualities as a way of service to Sri Hari. This is, in his case, it is not at all a defect in any way. So in the case of other aparoksha jnanis down the hierarchy, it is also again not a serious defect, though sometimes they are also overcome by negative emotions partially, but again they are not totally deluded or deviated due to them. So without aparoksha jnana, the difference is that people are more prone to that. Especially those who do not have aparoksha jnana are more prone to all sorts of defects, and the mind also has not much control over cravings for papa karmas. This is said even in the second adhyaya of the Bhagavad Gita. Till one attains aparoksha jnana, there is a tendency to perform certain papa karmas. So now, how should one perform their sadhanas properly? This is a natural question which one may have. So basically, the procedures are simple. What one must perform is, one must always perform dhyana of Paramatma. That is contemplating mentally upon him through the different procedures and protocols mentioned in the Shastras. For example, performing japa, that is the meditative chanting of certain mantras or his names. Along with these, there are certain things called the angas, which basically are yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, pratyahara, and dharana. So these are additional components which one must practice, which are a part of one's sadhana, and these will enable one to properly perform their sadhanas. See, for your query about Tattvamasi, it is a different topic altogether and not related here, so we will not prefer to explain that here. You can refer to our YouTube video where we have already explained about Tattvamasi in detail, about the mantra from the Chandogya Upanishad, which states Tattvamasi, and how it is explained from the point of view of Tattvavaada. You can find that on our YouTube channel in our old uploads. So moving on, so there are certain things called the yamas and the niyamas. The yamas means mean the restrictions, certain restrictions which one must practice to by abstaining from papa karmas, and the niyamas are the rules which one must follow. So in the Vishnu Purana itself, in the 7th adhyaya, these yamas and niyamas are mentioned briefly. From shlokas 36 to 38, they are explained. So the yamas are, that is the restrictions are, ahimsa, satya, asteya, aparigraha, which basically are and brahmacharya. So these are the rules which one must follow by to abstain from papa karmas. Brahmacharya means being on the path of Brahman and always abstaining from distractions, and especially from sexual desires and anything which can cause one's downfall in their sadhana. Ahimsa means non-violence, which is basically the not injuring other people or living beings unnecessarily, and making sure that there is welfare of all the other beings who deserve it. Now, ahimsa does not literally mean, as stated by Gandhiji or anyone else, that one must absolutely not not indulge in war or violence with those who are extremely dangerous, because that is not at all the purport of the Shastras. And we know very well that the Mahabharata war was also fought at Kurukshetra, even though the Pandavas were aparoksha jnanis, and they knew very well that it was necessary to silence adharma, because it is not possible for one to be peaceful with a tamasika person. However, one must not indulge in causing injury or harm to those beings which are sattvic. The next yamas are satya, that is being honest, and asteya, not stealing or coveting anything which does not belong to oneself, or not exploiting another person's resources or even the environment for that matter, and aparigraha, that is disinterest in anything which is contrary to dharma. Aparigraha means staying away from papa karmas and knowing dharma at all times, and not indulging in anything which makes one deviate from dharma. So these are the yamas or the restrictions. Now the niyamas are swadhyaya, shaucha, santosha, tapas, and nitya atmavat. So these mean, swadhyaya means the learning of the shastras, the study of the shastras and other forms of knowledge, which is very much required for one to perform their sadhana properly and to perform upasana of Paramatma. The next is shaucha, both internal and external purity. So shaucha is also important, though it may seem irrelevant here, but the Shastras have again and again emphasized that even cleanliness is necessary. Now, this is just simply not physical cleanliness of the body, it is also cleanliness of the mind and the intellect, of the manas and the buddhi. So does anyone have any doubts so far? So Sri Devendra Tirtharu, who was an example of one person who was like an aparoksha jnani during the recent century, he had once stated that there are two kinds of people who usually we find. One category who believes that only internal purity of the mind is sufficient for one to prosper and progress spiritually, and another a set of people emphasize more on the external purity. He stated that both of them are idiots. Actually, the necessary thing is to have both external and internal purity. Both are mandatory and both are required for one to progress spiritually. So even for one to have a sattvika lifestyle and to practice bhakti properly, it is necessary to have both external, that is bahya, and antara, shaucha, that is the external and internal purity. So the next niyama is santosha. Santosha, which means satisfaction, being satisfied in all the situations. Now, again, this is something which is difficult to achieve at one shot. This is something which requires constant practice and constant sadhana to achieve. And without Bhagwan's grace, again, this is not something easy to achieve. Those who have attained aparoksha jnana will always be in such a state, but to achieve that also one needs to try their best to have a Satvika lifestyle. So in the Bhagavad Gita also, in the 13th Adhyaya, there is a shloka which says, Siddhya Siddhau Samam, equanimity in both success and failure. This is a very necessary and vital quality which is required. The quality of being satisfied and being in equanimity. One should not be too overjoyed or too sorrowful. One should never be swayed by their or carried away by their emotions, because such a quality is indicative of Rajoguna. It is not Sattva-guna. So if one freely allows the mind to just go however it wants, it is obviously going to cause trouble, and it will not be anything beneficial at all. It will obviously be a huge obstruction to one's sadhana. If there is no control over the mind, it will be a serious problem. So that is why in the 6th Adhyaya of the Bhagavad Gita itself, it is said that when the mind is in control like a servant, it is the best friend. But when the mind is not in control, when one has not achieved control over the mind, it works like an enemy. The mind itself becomes the enemy. And tapas and niyatatmavat. So these are, tapas is basically the sadhana which is done, but it doesn't simply mean meditation in a forest like a sannyasi. That is not the meaning of tapas. Tapas means proper sadhana through which one achieves and progresses spiritually. And niyatatmavat means self-control, control over the atma, that is the self. So these are the yamas and the niyamas. Any queries so far?
Brother, tapas means tapasya only, no?
Yes, tapasya is not necessarily the way it is, where one may think it is by meditating and leaving all of one's karmas. Tapasya is can be done even through karma yoga and jnana yoga, which by living like a grihastha and also constantly performing proper sadhana and being in the having bhakti and always thinking of Paramatma through all of one's actions. That also counts as tapas only.
Okay, brother.
Regarding your query, how can grihasthas practice brahmacharya? So brahmacharya is usually referred to the ashrama, the stage of life where one lives as a student at a gurukula is referred to as brahmacharya. Now this doesn't mean that the work of brahmacharya is the practice of brahmacharya cannot be done by grihasthas, because brahmacharya means being on the path of Brahman and abstaining from all the distractions and especially anything to do with sexuality. Now this doesn't mean that grihasthas cannot practice it, because as long as grihasthas do not have lust over their spouse and they indulge in sexual intercourse only for the sake of having children, they are still said to be brahmacharis only. The same is said in the Vishnu Dharma Purana, or one of the Smritis, which I don't remember right now. So that way, even they can be said to be brahmacharis. So that's why the Mahabharata calls Arjuna and Krishna also as brahmacharis. Hope that makes it clear.
Ram Prabhu, can I ask a question?
Sure. Guruji has
Yes,
joined
Prabhu.
now. Hare Rama Guru.
I mean, what is man required first? Sri Hari's Anugraha or the Ashtanga Yoga? Because if one clearly sees the 8 limbs of the yoga, he can realize that each of the limbs itself is very difficult. So in that, to perform that actions, I mean, the 8 limbs of the Ashtanga Yoga, it is in turn Sri Hari's Anugraha is needed.
Guruji, could you only clarify his doubt since you are here now?
Yeah, you give an answer because I just joined the conversation. I'll I'll speak. You've been speaking, right? Please.
It was actually a new query, Guruji, just as you joined.
No, it's okay. You answer it. I'll take it forward. You answer.
Okay, Guruji. So, Paramatma's grace is very much required for progressing on the path of bhakti. So, among the Sri Vaishnavas, there is actually one division among the Tenkalais and Vadakalais based on whether whether the anugraha of Bhagwan is given by him as such without any cause, or is obtained through bhakti and other practices like jnana and karma yoga. So the Madhva stance is similar to those who say that it depends both on us and Bhagwan. So through the practice of bhakti and other sadhanas which we perform, mainly through bhakti, one obtains his anugraha. So even the Kata Upanishad mentions something like this, which where Srimad Acharya highlights it in his Bhashya actually, because there it is said that Paramatma reveals himself to those who achieve his anugraha. Now this doesn't simply mean that randomly one will achieve his anugraha and there is no reason why they will. So that is obtained through aparoksha jnana, and that comes through the processes of the different protocols mentioned in the shastras, and through continuous practice of bhakti and reaching the highest stage of bhakti. So that is when through such bhakti only one attains aparoksha jnana and has the realization of Paramatma. That is why in the definition of bhakti, as quoted from the Narada Pancharatra by Sri Madhvacharya, it is said, Taya muktir nacha anyata. There is mukti only through that, through bhakti, and not by any other means. Does that answer your query?
No, Prabhu, I'm just asking that, I mean, by bhakti we are getting his anugraha. But in the first place, performing the bhakti, it is very difficult by itself. So in this method, I mean, in the process also we need his anugraha.
No, you don't start from scratch. There is already some level of bhakti in the Atma already. It doesn't start from scratch.
Okay, so
Today is Ramanavami, so we wish you all a very happy Ramanavami. And there was an incident that happened apparently somewhere in Kerala, that somebody came to a king and he asked him, is there any scholar in your asthana who can clearly mention what is the Sara, which verse or which part of the Ramayana is really the essence of Ramayana? So it became a question of honor for the king. So he summons all his best and he tells them that you better come up with the answer by the next day. And he even threatened to punish if they wouldn't come up with an answer. So the main person on whom the responsibility to come up with an answer was there. He went to the crematorium, Smashana, and he sat there just thinking, because tomorrow he has to come up with an answer. Of course, we might think he should have been sitting with the Ramayana, but they know the whole Ramayana. Now what they need to do is to think. So he went there, he was pondering on what would be the answer. Because the answer is not just that it is not just that it would be validated by acceptance by that challenger. The answer, if it is really the essence of Ramayana, it should be clear to you also. When you hear that and when you say that this is what the Ramayana is the essence of Ramayana, it should make sense. So he was looking for what is there like that I can say is really, because every part is important. Every kanda is mentioning something very important. So what can you say is the sara of everything? As he was pondering this, he heard two pishachis speaking from on top of a tree. One pishachi they were just commenting on this scholar who was sitting in a way that he could hear. But I mean, I don't know if they intended that he hear, but they were speaking and he overheard. So one of the pishachis was saying, "Why is this scholar sitting here?" No. So the other side, it seems there's some problem in their asthana. They want to know what's the sara of Ramayana, and unless he gives the answer tomorrow, he's in trouble. So one of the pishachis says, "Come on, why should that be such a difficult question to answer? Isn't it obvious?" What is that verse that you think is obvious? Yeah, obviously the essence of Ramayana is the verse Ramam Dasharatham Viddhi Mam Viddhi Janakatmajam Ayodhyam Atavim Viddhi Gacchata Tayata Yatha Sukham. Is there anyone who has heard this verse or not heard this verse?
No, Guru.
This is a very famous verse from Ramayana. It is quoted often. This was the instructions given to Lakshmana by Sumitra, his mother, while departing to the forest with Ramachandra. Ramam Dasharatham Viddhi Mam Viddhi Janakatmajam Ayodhyam Atavim Viddhi Gacchata Tayatha Sukham. So when he heard that verse is the essence of the Ramayana, the sara of the entire Ramayana. So he jumped up with joy and he came back and he wrote over 15 interpretations of that verse, where he went on exploring the inner meanings of that verse, the inner abhiprayas of that verse. And that book that he wrote is still available today. It is available. So the main meaning of that he explores in his book is Ramam Dasharatham Vidhi. Dashaha. Dashaha means birds, actually. Okay, first of all, let me say the apparent meaning. What is obvious when you hear the verse, the apparent meaning is that Sumitra is telling to Sumitra is the name of Lakshmana's mother. For those of you who might not know. I mean, in today's world, you could expect that people don't know Lakshmana's mother's name. So Sumitra, when she was instructing Lakshmana, she told him that, see, you're going to go with Rama to the forest, with Rama and Sita. And when you're there with them, understand Rama to be Dasharatha. Look at Rama as Dasharatha. That means look at Rama as your father. The elder brother is, in the absence of the father, the elder brother is considered to be the father. Ramam Dasharatham Viddhi. Mam Viddhi Janakatmajam. Janakatmaja is Sita, the daughter of Janaka Maharaja. For those of you who don't know, Sita is seen as the daughter of Janaka. Janaka Maharaja happened to be the king of Mithila. So understand Sita to be myself. That is, Sumitra is saying, look at Rama as Dasharatha and look at Sita as me. Me means the person who is speaking here is Sumitra, mother of Lakshmana, wife of Dasharatha. So, Ayodhyam Atavim Viddhi. Atavi means forest. Understand the forest itself to be Ayodhya. Because Lakshmana is going to go from Ayodhya to the forest. So what does he have in Ayodhya? He has his father Dasharatha, he has his mother Sumitra, and of course the other, and all other people of Ayodhya. So now that he is going to the forest, his mother is saying, in the forest, think of Rama, because in the forest he is going to be with Rama and Sita and other dwellers of the forest. So he is telling, think of Rama as Dasharatha, think of Sita as me, think of the forest as Ayodhya. And with this in mind, do as you like, O Lakshmana. Do as you please. With this much in mind, don't change this. With this, you do as you please. Now that's the apparent meaning. But then when he explores the inner meaning of this verse, he says, Ramam Dasharatham Vidhi. Rama is Dasharatha. Dashaha means birds are called Dashahas. Ratha means vehicle. So the one with the bird as his vehicle is only Narayana, Vishnu. The chief of birds, Garuda. Dasharatha. She is intending to say that Rama is Dasharatha means that he is Vishnu. Understand Rama to be Vishnu. The eagle vehicle person, Garuda Vahana. Dasharatha. Mam Vidhi Janakatmajam. The word Ma, Mam, it's a form of Asmat Shabda. It refers to me. You could say, Mam Vidhi, understand me to be. But also the word Ma in itself means Lakshmi. Janakatmajam Mam Vidhi, understand Janakatmaja or Sita to be Ma means Lakshmi. Rama or Ma, just Ma also means Lakshmi. There are very few, quite unknown names of Lakshmi. E is also another name of Lakshmi. Tam Padminim Im Sharanamaham Prapadye Alakshmir Me Nashyatam Tvam Vrune in the Shri Sukta. Im, E means Lakshmi. Like that, Ma also means Lakshmi. Mam Vidhi Janakatmajam. Understand Janakatmaja, Sita, to be Lakshmi. Understand Rama to be Vishnu. Ayodhya Matavim Vidhi. Understand that when you people go to the forest, that is when, because of the presence of these two, of Lakshmi Narayana in the forest, because of their presence, Atavi will become Ayodhya. Yodhya means a person who has to be fought with. So because the forest was invested with Janasthana and all these areas of the forest were heavily invested with demons. So she's saying that henceforth, that is after Rama, Sita enter the forest is going to become free from Yodhyas. Because it's going to become free from Yodhyas, it's going to become Ayodhya. So Atavim Ayodhyam Vidhi. Understand that when these two go to the forest will become, now the forest is full of Yodhyas, full of demons. Because of these two going, the forest will become free from Yodhyas, so it will become Ayodhya. Understanding this, Gachatata Yatha Sukham. Move as you please. This was one. The whole Ramayana is an enumeration of the qualities of Rama. And parallelly, it is giving a strong sense, it is giving a strong lesson that a person who is so full of qualities, God who is so full of qualities, is always banished by people. The very point of mentioning him to be as full of qualities, full of gunas, full of Ananta Kalyana Guna, in Ananta Matra, that infinitely full of all good qualities. And yet he is banished. So that means that there is no reason to banish him. So we, out of our ignorance, end up banishing the most unbanishable object. The most unbanishable thing is Rama. But yet he becomes banished almost every time, by almost everyone. Dasharatha appears to be a person who was ardently seeking to establish Rama. But actually he became a major instrument in the banishment of Rama because of his over love towards Kaikeyi, at the cost of ignoring Kausalya and others, and at the cost of losing discretion. To that level, that extreme ogling of Kaikeyi had led him to that state wherein he lost discretion. That is the reason basically why Rama took such a strong step. If it would not have been so, Rama would have remained back in Ayodhya. If anyone suffered the most because of Rama's going, it is Dasharatha. Dasharatha died in that pain of separation. So, of course, no doubt that he has his deepest appreciation of Rama. But there is a lesson there that when you, of course, you appreciate Rama, but then you can hold on to Rama only when you do not breach, do not let it, breaches in your character will let go of Rama. It's like a pot with a hole. The content inside will flow out. So Rama flowed out of Dasharatha because of a breach in his character, of his overly love towards Kaikeyi, to the extent that he had mentioned to Kaikeyi that if you want, I can even get a completely innocent person and behead him if you want. Dasharatha says this to Kaikeyi. Just because if it brings pleasure to you, I could even do such a thing. So this kind of a corruption was not tolerated by Krishna in the administration. When people behaved whimsically in the Mahabharata, the same way Rama also was very intolerant of that aspect of Dasharatha. There was no doubt that Dasharatha was overly attached to Rama also. So that was, in one sense, when you get attached to wiles like that, faulty attachments like that, that itself is a kind, you're making way for banishing the good. Light and darkness don't stay together. For once, all of them at some point banished Rama. Sugriva had banished Rama in the sense that he forgot to fulfill his commitment to Rama to take up the search for Sita as soon as monsoon subsides. Let's grant that the fact that he did not accept Rama when he first saw him was because of his ignorance. And Rama went to a great length to make him realize of his prowess by demonstrating to him his prowess in the way that he wanted it to be demonstrated, by penetrating the 7 talavrakshas by a single arrow. Each of those were so powerful that even their leaf could not be penetrated, but Rama penetrated with a single arrow all the 7 talavrakshas. He also threw the skeleton of the demon killed by Vali. He threw that skeleton several yojanas, 80 yojanas or so, away from there. So, despite demonstrating all this, Vali had his own, Sugriva had his own doubts about Rama's ability to kill Vali. So he maintained that doubt. But even after Rama killed Vali, then when he became ascertained, even after that, he for once, he got lost in his own life and he banished Rama in that way. And he had to be reminded by Lakshmana's fierce, threatening words to resume his duties towards Rama. Lakshmana himself also, when Rama had asked him to stay guard of Sita, when he went to bring the golden deer, when Sita chastised him in ways that were very hurtful, Lakshmana couldn't bear it anymore. And then he decided to give up the orders of Rama, that he has to stand there and stand guard of Sita. He, being hurt, he left that duty assigned to him by Rama. And that was the one question that Rama asked him. That duty requires that we overcome, that we are able to endure any amount of insult or infamy in the pursuit of our duty, even if it means physical or mental pain. The very sense of duty requires that we endure that. And that is what makes a person a trustworthy person. But Lakshmana, when he heard those sharp words of Sita, he decided to give up his duty and just do what Sita asked, that go and see what has happened to Rama. And that actually made way for Ravana to come and take her away. So at that moment, you could say that Lakshmana had banished Rama. So Rama is so full of all qualities. At the same time, the Ramayana is presenting him as constantly being banished, although he is not worthy of being banished. The supreme truth is presented like that in Ramayana. There is a drama written by a person called Murari Sharma. His drama is Anargha Raghava. It's not the best of dramas that can be written. Murari Sharma is a very intense Mimamsaka. But he has recited, he has described Yanti Nyaya Pravrittasya Triyanchopi Sahayatam Apanthanam tu munchanti Sodaropi Apathanam tu gachantam Sodaropi vimunchati. That the qualities of Brahma are so that even Vanaras in huge numbers became of help to him because he was in the right pursuit. He was on dharma, on the path of dharma. When you are in the path of dharma, even animals, everything will come to favor you. But if you are going on the wrong path, it may just happen that your own brothers and your own brothers and siblings might also just leave you. So the qualities, it's again indicative of the qualities of Rama. Fine. So that was what I wanted to say today. That was what was there on top of my head. So thank you everyone for listening. And if there are any questions, please put forward. Okay, so I will log off. So if Prajna wants to continue, you could please continue.
Nothing much is left, Guruji. I guess we can end here for today.
Okay, let's end here for today. Shri Krishna Arpanamastu. May Lord Rama be pleased with Shravana. Hare Ram. Narayana. Narayana.
Hare Rama, Guruji.
Hare Ram.